I was working the front desk at a hotel in Tokyo when an American guest called down at 3 in the morning. He sounded wide awake. He asked if room service was available. I told him no, it closes at midnight. He said, "But it's dinner time." I paused. I asked what time he thought it was. He said, "Like 6 o'clock." I told him it was 3 in the morning. He went quiet. Then he said, "Wait, what day is it?" I told him it was Thursday. He said, "It was Tuesday when I left." I explained that he crossed the international date line. He said, "So I lost a whole day?" I said, "Technically, yes." He hung up. 10 minutes later, he called back and asked if breakfast was ready yet. Another time, I was at a train station in Sydney. An American woman asked me what time her train to Melbourne left. I looked at her ticket. It said 14 works. She asked, "Is that 2 o'clock?" I said yes, 2 in the afternoon. She looked relieved. Then she asked, "What time is it now?" I said 1:30. She said, "Oh good, I have time." Then she asked, "Wait, is that your time or my time?" I asked what she meant. She said, "Like California time or Australia time?" I told her we were in Australia, so it was Australia time. She nodded slowly. Then she asked, "So what time is it in California right now?" I had no idea. She pulled out her phone, checked, and said, "Oh, wow, they're asleep." She seemed genuinely surprised that time zones were different. My friend worked at a call center in Dublin. Americans would phone in at all hours. One guy called at 4 in the morning, Dublin time. He was angry that nobody had answered his earlier calls. My friend explained that their office hours were 9 to 5 Irish time. The guy said, "Well, it's noon here." My friend said that was great, but it was 4 in the morning in Ireland. The guy said, "You should have someone working at all times." My friend explained they were a small company, not a 24-hour service. The guy said, "That's bad business," and hung up. He called back 3 hours later during normal business hours and acted like nothing had happened. I saw someone at an airport in London trying to call their bank in New York. It was 6 in the morning London time. The automated system said the bank was closed. She kept calling back. Same message. She walked up to an information desk and asked why her bank was not open. The employee asked what bank. She said it was in America. He explained it was 1 in the morning in New York. She said, "Oh." Then she asked, "When will they open?" He said probably in 8 hours. She looked at her phone, did some math, and said, "So I have to wait until 2 in the afternoon here?" He said yes. She sat down looking frustrated, like the time zones were personally inconveniencing her. These moments happen constantly, and it is not just about time zones. It is about the entire concept of time working differently depending on where you are. And when Americans realize the world does not run on their schedule, things get confusing fast. I was a receptionist at a doctor's office in Berlin. An American tourist called to make an appointment. I asked when he wanted to come in. He said, "Tomorrow at 3. I asked, "3 in the afternoon?" He said yes. I booked it. He showed up the next day at 9 in the morning. I told him his appointment was at 3. He said, "It is 3. I looked at the clock. It was 9. He pulled out his phone and showed me. It still said 3 o'clock, but it was set to New York time. I explained that he needed to change his phone to local time. He said, "Why would I do that?" I told him because he was in Germany now. He said, "But then I won't know what time it is at home." I suggested he could remember the time difference. He did not seem convinced. We rescheduled him for the afternoon. A colleague in Singapore told me about a business meeting that got ruined by time zones. An American company scheduled a video call with their Singapore office. They sent a meeting invite for 3 o'clock. Everyone in Singapore showed up at 3 in the afternoon, their time. Nobody from America joined. They waited 30 minutes. Then someone sent an email asking where the American team was. Turns out, the Americans meant 3 o'clock their time, which was 3 in the morning in Singapore. Nobody had clarified. The meeting got rescheduled, but the Singaporean team was annoyed because they had all stayed late for nothing. I worked at a tour company in Cairo. We offered desert trips that left at sunrise. An American couple booked one. I told them pickup was at 5 in the morning. They said fine. The morning came. The driver went to their hotel. They were not ready. The driver called. No answer. He waited 20 minutes. They finally came down at 6:30. The husband said, "We thought you meant 5 o'clock our time." The driver asked what that meant. The wife explained they were still on East Coast time mentally. The driver said the sun does not care what time zone you are thinking in. They missed the sunrise. They still went on the trip, but complained the whole time that it was not properly explained. A hotel manager in Paris told me about a guest who missed checkout because of time confusion. Checkout was at 11 in the morning. The guest came down at 2 in the afternoon with all his bags. The manager explained he was 3 hours late. The guest said, "No, I checked out right at 11. The manager asked what he meant. The guest pointed at his watch. It said 11, but it was still set to Chicago time. The manager explained that Paris time was 2 in the afternoon. The guest argued that his watch said 11, so he was on time. The manager charged him for a late checkout. The guest left a bad review saying the hotel had confusing policies. I was at an airport in Bangkok. An American asked me what time his flight boarded. I looked at his boarding pass. It said 22 hours. He asked, "Is that 10 at night?" I said yes. He said, "Okay, so I have time." I asked what time he thought it was. He looked at his phone and said, 4 o'clock. I asked if his phone was on local time. He said, "I don't know." I checked the airport clock. It was 8:30 at night. His flight was boarding in 90 minutes. He looked at his phone again, realized it was wrong, and ran toward his gate. I do not know if he made it. My cousin worked at a restaurant in Melbourne. An American made a reservation for 8 o'clock on Friday night. He showed up on Saturday at 8 in the morning. My cousin explained that his reservation was the night before. The guy said, "No, I made it for 8 o'clock on the 10th. My cousin checked the booking. It was for Friday the 10th at 8 in the evening. The guy insisted he confirmed it for the morning. My cousin showed him the confirmation email. It clearly said 8:48 p.m. The guy said, "I thought p.m. meant morning." My cousin explained that a.m. is morning and p.m. is afternoon or evening. The guy said, "I always get those mixed up." They did not have any tables available. He left, looking annoyed. A flight attendant told me about a passenger who missed a connecting flight because of time confusion. He landed in Dubai with a 4-hour layover. He checked his phone and saw he had plenty of time, so he left the airport to get food. When he came back, his connecting flight was gone. He argued with the gate agent that his layover was 4 hours. She asked what time his connecting flight was. He showed her his phone. It was still set to his departure city. He had not accounted for the time change. His actual layover was 90 minutes, and he had been gone for 2 hours. They put him on the next flight, but he had to pay a change fee. He was furious. I worked at a gym in Vancouver. We offered early morning classes at 6. An American visitor signed up for one. He showed up at 8. The class was over. He said his alarm went off at 5:30, so he was early. I asked if he adjusted his phone for local time. He said no. I explained that Vancouver was 3 hours behind his home time zone. He said, "So when I woke up at 5:30, it was actually 8:30 here?" I said yes. He looked exhausted. He said, "No wonder I felt so rested." He asked if there was another class. There was one at noon. He signed up for it, but said, "I'm not adjusting my clock. It's too confusing." I was a gate agent in Auckland. An American passenger came up to me upset. He said he missed his flight. I checked his ticket. His flight was the next day. He said, "No, it's today." I showed him the date on the ticket. It said the 15th. I showed him the calendar. It was the 14th. He looked at his phone. It said the 15th. I explained that he crossed the date line, and his phone had not updated. He said, "So I didn't miss my flight?" I said, "No, it leaves tomorrow." He said, "But I've been here a whole day already." I explained that when you cross the date line going west, you skip ahead a day. He said, That doesn't make sense. I agreed it was confusing but assured him his flight was tomorrow. He walked away, shaking his head. A tour guide in Fiji told me about a group that got confused about what day it was. They arrived on a Tuesday. The next day, one of them asked what day it was. The guide said Wednesday. The tourist said, "No, it should be Thursday." The guide asked why. The tourist said, "Because we left on Monday, and we've been traveling for 2 days." The guide explained that they crossed the date line and gained a day. The tourist said, "So we time traveled?" The guide said sort of, but not really. The tourist spent the rest of the trip telling people he had time traveled. He was not joking. I worked at a hotel in Samoa. An American couple checked in and asked what day their flight home was. I checked their booking. It was on Saturday. They said, "Okay, so we have 4 more days." I counted. It was Tuesday. That was 4 days. But then I realized they had not accounted for crossing the date line on their return flight. When they flew back, they would arrive the same day they left, just hours later. I tried to explain this. The wife said, "So we lose a day?" I said technically yes. She said, "Where does it go?" I did not have a good answer. Her husband said, "It's fine, we'll figure it out." I do not think they did. A receptionist in Tonga told me about a guest who called the front desk confused. He said he was supposed to call his office for a meeting, but he could not figure out what day it was there. The receptionist asked what day he thought it was. He said Wednesday. She confirmed it was Wednesday in Tonga. He said, "But is it Wednesday in New York?" She said no, it was Tuesday in New York. He said, "How can it be 2 different days at the same time?" She explained time zones and the date line. He said, "That's insane." Then he asked her to help him figure out what time to call. She suggested he use a world clock app. He said, "I shouldn't need an app to know what day it is." I was at an airport in Los Angeles. A passenger had just arrived from Tokyo. He looked exhausted. He asked me what day it was. I said Thursday. He said, "But it was Friday when I left." I explained he crossed the date line going east, so he went back a day. He said, "So I can relive Thursday?" I said in a way, yes. He said, "Can I call in sick to work twice?" I laughed. He was serious. He said, "If I left on Friday and arrived on Thursday, technically, I haven't been to work on Friday yet." I told him that was not how it worked. He seemed disappointed. My friend worked at a cruise line that crossed the date line. Every time they crossed, the crew had to explain to passengers what was happening. One American passenger refused to believe it. He said, "You can't just skip a day." The crew member explained that was exactly what happened when you crossed the date line westbound. He said, "So what happens to that day?" She said, "Nothing. It just does not exist for you." He said, "That's theft." She asked what he meant. He said, "You're stealing a day from my vacation." She explained that he got an extra day on the way back. He did not care. He complained to management. A teacher in Kiribati told me about a student exchange program. American students visited for 2 weeks. One student asked what day it was back home. The teacher helped him figure it out. It was a day behind. The student said, "So my parents are in yesterday?" The teacher said, "In a way, yes." The student said, "Can I call them and tell them what happens tomorrow?" The teacher explained that did not work like that. The student seemed let down. He said, "Time zones ruin everything." I worked at a travel agency in Hawaii. We booked a lot of flights to Asia. An American client called confused. She said, "I leave on Monday and arrive on Wednesday. Where did Tuesday go?" I explained she crossed the date line. She said, "But I want Tuesday back." I told her she would get an extra day on her return flight. She said, "I don't want an extra day coming back. I want Tuesday." I suggested she could think of it as skipping a workday. She said, "I like my job." I did not know how to respond. She booked the flight, but was not happy about it. A hotel worker in Guam told me about a guest who missed an anniversary because of dateline confusion. He and his wife crossed the date line on their anniversary day, so the day just skipped. When they arrived, it was the next day. He realized what happened and was upset. He asked the hotel if they could change the date back. The worker explained that was not possible. He asked if the hotel could pretend it was still their anniversary. They agreed and brought champagne to the room, but he still complained that the date line ruined his trip. I was a manager at an office in London. We had a conference call scheduled with our New York branch. It was supposed to be at 3 in the afternoon, London time. Everyone in London joined the call. Nobody from New York showed up. We waited 20 minutes. Then someone sent a message. Turns out the US had just switched to daylight saving time, and the UK had not yet. So the time difference changed by an hour. Nobody on the American side realized. We rescheduled, but everyone in London had wasted their afternoon. A customer service rep in Sydney told me about a client who called furious. He said he had been on hold for 2 hours. The rep checked the call logs. The client had called at midnight Sydney time. The rep explained their hours were 9 to 5. The client said, "It's 3 in the afternoon here." The rep explained that did not matter because the office was in Australia. The client said, "You need to accommodate international customers." The rep said they did during their business hours. The client demanded to speak to a manager. The manager said the same thing. The client hung up and left a 1-star review. I worked at a university in Toronto. We had international students from all over. An American student missed an important exam because of daylight saving confusion. The exam was scheduled for 9 in the morning the day after clocks changed. She showed up at 10. She said her phone alarm did not go off on time. The professor explained that clocks had moved forward an hour. She said, "I thought that was only in America." The professor said no. Canada does it too. She said, "Nobody told me." The professor pointed out there had been announcements all week. She had not paid attention. She had to take a makeup exam and was not pleased. A consultant in Dubai told me about a project that got delayed because of time confusion. They were working with a team in New York. Dubai does not observe daylight saving time. New York does, so twice a year, the time difference changes. During one of these changes, the Dubai team scheduled a presentation for what they thought was a good time for New York. But they forgot about daylight saving. The New York team had to join at 6 in the morning. Half of them overslept. The presentation was a disaster. The Dubai team apologized but said it was hard to keep track of which countries changed their clocks and when. I was at a software company in Berlin. We had clients in Arizona. Arizona does not observe daylight saving time, but most of the US does. So for part of the year, Arizona is on the same time as California. For the other part, it is on the same time as Colorado. An American client called confused. He said our meeting times kept changing. We explained it was because of daylight saving. He said, "I'm in Arizona. We don't do that." We explained that Germany does, so from his perspective, our time changed. He said, "That's so annoying." We agreed. He suggested we just pick one time and stick to it. We explained that was not how time zones worked. He was not satisfied. My cousin worked at a remote company with employees all over the world. Twice a year, scheduling became a nightmare. Some countries changed their clocks, some did not. Some changed on different weekends. Someone created a shared calendar, but people kept showing up at the wrong time. One meeting had 3 people show up an hour early, 2 people an hour late, and 1 person on time. The manager said, "This is chaos." They eventually switched to just using UTC time for all meetings. People still got confused, but at least it was consistent. A doctor in New Zealand told me about a telemedicine appointment that went wrong. A patient in California booked a video call. The system automatically scheduled it based on time zones. But then daylight saving happened in the US. The patient joined the call an hour late. The doctor had already moved on to the next appointment. The patient was upset. He said the system told him the wrong time. The doctor explained that the system was correct, but his local time had changed. The patient said, "Why doesn't New Zealand change their clocks too?" The doctor explained that New Zealand does, just on different dates. The patient said, "This is too complicated." They rescheduled for the following week. I worked at an airline in Sao Paulo. An American passenger missed his flight because of daylight saving confusion. He said he checked the time difference before he left for the airport. But Brazil had recently stopped observing daylight saving time, so the time difference he looked up was wrong. He arrived 2 hours late. He demanded to be put on the next flight for free. We explained it was his responsibility to check current time zones. He said, "How was I supposed to know Brazil changed their rules?" We told him it had been announced months ago. He said, "I don't follow Brazilian news." We put him on standby for the next flight. He waited 6 hours. A professor in Oslo told me about an online course with students from around the world. She scheduled live lectures at times that worked for most time zones. But then daylight saving happened in Europe. Half the students showed up at the old time. Half showed up at the new time. She had to do the lecture twice. The next week, she sent a detailed email explaining the time change. 3 students still showed up at the wrong time. One said, "I thought Norway was in a different time zone than the rest of Europe." The professor said, "We are, but we still observe daylight saving." The student said, "That's confusing." The professor agreed. I was at a restaurant in Seoul. An American couple sat down for dinner. The husband asked what time the restaurant closed. The waiter said 11. The husband looked at his watch and said, "Okay, so we have 4 hours." The waiter looked confused. It was already 9:30. The husband's watch was still set to Los Angeles time. His wife noticed and pointed it out. He looked at his watch, then at the clock on the wall and said, "Oh no." They rushed through their meal and left in 30 minutes. The waiter told me later he thought they had an emergency. That is what time zones do to people. They turn simple questions like, "What time is it?" into complex math problems. And for Americans especially, who are used to a country where the entire mainland spans only 4 time zones, traveling internationally is a wake-up call. Suddenly, there are places where it is tomorrow already, or yesterday still, or the same day but 12 hours ahead. And none of it makes intuitive sense. The thing is, time zones exist for a reason. The sun cannot be overhead everywhere at once. So we divide the world into zones to keep daylight hours somewhat consistent. But humans did not evolve to think about time this way. We evolved to wake up when the sun rose and sleep when it set. Time zones are a modern invention, and they break our brains a little. What makes it worse is that not every place follows the same rules. Some places do daylight saving, some do not. Some are on half-hour offsets, some are on the dateline, and keeping track of all of it while traveling is almost impossible. You need apps, reminders, world clocks, and even then, you will probably still mess up at least once. But here is the real issue. Americans are used to things being convenient. Everything in the US is designed to make life easier. Stores open late. Services run all day. Systems are built for the customer. So when they go somewhere that does not bend to their schedule, it feels wrong. Not inconvenient. Wrong. Like the world should adjust. And maybe that is the lesson. The world does not adjust. You do. Time zones are not going away. The dateline is staying where it is. Daylight saving will keep confusing everyone twice a year. And the only way to deal with it is to accept that time works differently, depending on where you are. Check your phone, set your alarms, double-check your meeting times, and maybe, just maybe, remember that when it is noon where you are, it is midnight somewhere else. Because trust me, these stories are not stopping. Every single day, someone books a flight for the wrong time, misses a meeting because of a time zone, or shows up a day early because they forgot about the dateline. And honestly, it is understandable. Time zones are confusing, but they are also not going anywhere. So the best thing you can do is laugh about it when you mess up. Because you will.